messing up the camera. All right. Good evening. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Liberia Rise. I am your host, Mr. Augustine Sharif, and I'm here with my good friend, Mr. George. Dr. George, how are you doing today? Dr. George Emmanuel Sapalusia.
I'm doing very fine. Thank you. I'm doing great. Thank you.
Seem like you're representing your Dallas Mavericks today. I see you with the our representation. Hope you guys
Yes, the best basketball team in the world.
the best basketball team in the world. I think the Denver Nuggets got something to say about that.
When was the last time they won championship?
The
Mr.
Nuggets.
Sapalusia.
The Nuggets.
No,
Mr.
when,
Sapalusia, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm good. I just want to know when was the last time the Maverick won a championship. I'm trying to find
Different show, different day, different show.
Not a show topic today.
But, again, guys, we want to welcome all of our viewers. If you're joining us from Facebook, YouTube, we say welcome to the show. Today promises to be a very great discussion. We are going to do it. We are going to touch this elephant, and we are going to try to dissect this elephant as much as we can. Today, we are going to be looking at this seemingly divide that exists between Black Americans and Blacks from different parts of the world. We will touch it. And we have one of our sisters who's going to be joining us today, Sister Lady Ricky. She's going to be joining us from Texas, and she's going to be lending her voice to the discussion as well. So, gentlemen, let us not kill too much time. We will go ahead and just play our theme song, introduce the segment, and we will get the show on the roll. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. And to our friends joining us from YouTube, through YouTube or Facebook, we say welcome to the show, and we encourage you to please share the broadcast. Today's discussion, we are also asking you to be part of the discussion. You can send us your comment. You can be part of the show. There's going to be a number we'll put up here that you can call to be part of the discussion. Today, if you have seen the flyer, we are trying to look into this divide that apparently exists between Black Americans and Blacks from other parts of the world, specifically Africa. Let's just go there. And so we are going to be touching that discussion today. So joining us for the first time on this platform, I am going to introduce our special guest, Miss Lady Ricky. She's going to be joining us. There she is. Miss Ricky, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm well. How are you?
Wonderful. It's great to have you here. I'm super excited. I don't know if you can tell.
I think so.
Yes, welcome to the show. So, and to all of our viewers, we say please share the broadcast and be part of the discussion. We'll have a number here that you can actually join to be part of the conversation as well. Today, the title of our show is just Bridging the Divide. I'm going to take the lead here on this, and each of us will take some time to talk about this division that exists. And just to be clear, we actually reach out to several of our African American friends because we wanted them on this discussion. Only Lady Ricky was brave enough to be part of this discussion, and we applaud her for doing this. We applaud you for doing so. But as long as I've been in this country, it was not something that I really thought about when I was back home. When I thought about coming to this country, my fear was never about the black person in this country. I never thought about that. I never thought there would be any kind of division between us because I've just always felt like we are one. Growing up as a kid in Liberia, when you thought about America, or when you were imitating Americans, you were not imitating the way the white talk or the way the Asian talk. You were not imitating all of those things. You were imitating the way the African Americans in this country, the way they talk, the swag, and the way they walk. Those were the things that we practice. At least I speak for myself. Those were the things that I kind of went around practicing. I want to be like that. I want to be cool like that. I want to talk like that. And the only thing I never did, I never was able to acquire the way to talk, to talk that way. But it was one of those things that you look forward to. You want to be like that. You want to be cool like that. You want to be able to do all these different things. And then coming to the country now, and I don't know how many of you guys have seen the Trevor Noah show where he talks about trying to talk like African American. That is a real thing. Those who have not seen it, you should definitely go and check it out. It's a real thing. Africans, we sit there and we said, look, that is what we want. That is how we want to talk. That is what we want to do. And so coming now to the country where you feel like, hey, here are my brothers and sisters, and they say, whoa, pour brakes on that. Actually, there is a little gap here that you're not too black yet. You need to make yourself black enough. And so I really wanted to touch this topic because it is something I had not really heard much of. And so when we were having our discussion between our panel here, everybody was like, oh man, that thing exists. So I wanted to hear from the rest of the panelists. But I will go first, though. I want to go first to Mr. George. He looked too serious. So let me go to Mr. George. I'll pick on him. Let me go to Mr. George and let him he's the historian. He is the academics on the show. Let him give us some insight on this particular topic. And then we'll just kind of go from there, go down the line. Mr. George, take the lead on this.
Yes. Thank you so much for picking on me, as you put it. But I think it's a topic that needs to be discussed. It's a difficult topic. It's a challenging topic. And the history is there on both sides. First of all, my first strong encounter with African Americans as a group, growing up in Liberia, it was obvious that you had to encounter African American. But my first major encounter of the group, the diverse, how they call it, was during Penifest, the Pan-African Festival in Ghana. And one of the things I can literally remember was, I think we were in Cape Coast at that time, and after a program, one of them came up to us, Africans, few of my colleagues and I, and said, you see, you people sold us into slavery. And, you people are evil, are selling us into slavery. So in most African American, I think most African American culture, there's the first note that the reason why we are here in this part of the world is because our brothers and our sisters sold us into slavery. That's the first beginning of a tension that literally maybe we have not been able to explain to our African American friends. If I had to explain this week to my Caucasian American colleague at the office, because he watched this Netflix movie, is it the Queen or the Queen Mother? There's this beautiful Netflix movies that it takes the history of their homie, And then he was like, the part of the movies that was me was selling Africans into slavery. So I had to sit with him to really make him to understand that within the African concept, just like the Bible, slavery was not as evil as it was done when they came. In fact, many Africans may not even comprehend what happens to African Americans when they came over this end. That's the first section. Then the second issue that historically that brings this up is that as Africans, when we travel to this part of the world, whether to settle, and it's not racism, maybe people may see it like that, but you most likely will want to integrate in a community where you see people of your kind. And you get on the bus, you naturally go towards people of your kind. You go to the restaurant, you're naturally looking for an African restaurant or a community restaurant. But what Africans see threaten them. And I give you an example. This week, I was they said this week of several weeks ago. Sorry, I made a trip and into a community. I mean, big community. That take Philadelphia for example. You make a trip into Philadelphia. Before you want to eat an African food, and most African restaurants are connected in the quote unquote black neighborhood. But this neighborhood looks threatening also because, it looks like the police presence are higher, the rate of crime is higher. So for African immigrants coming and not understanding the culture and the dynamics of this country, the first thing that comes to your mind is that why are these Africans, Americans so rebellious? They are always in crime. They are always in drugs. And is there any other thing that they can do? So that also makes most Africans who have lived in this country for years, you find them moving to the suburbs away from African American, attending schools away from African American, because this historical concept that the forefathers have brought in their mind is that African Americans normally live in drugs infected area, and wherever African Americans are, you have this strong presence of the police. And so it is not an area that you want to raise your children, because as Africans, we raise our children in communities. We raise our children in family because we're new to the village way of living, we're new to the community way of living. But yet them still, you expect that form of protection from the community. So if my kids leave the house to go out in the street in Monrovia or in Lagos or anywhere in Africa, that movement, we will normally most likely say, oh, Uncle Paul is down the road, he's going to protect my child. Sis Mary is also down the road, she's going to look out for them, right? But the early migrants that came did not experience that, because it was everybody for their own God is for us all. So that made them to us, what kind of neighborhood we live in where our fellow Africans cannot allow our children to integrate, nor can they protect them, nor can we protect their kids. So that led to a movement of Africans away into the suburbs and other places. So not to take, that's on the floor, that's our thinking as Africans. You cannot take it is that, if you put 10 Africans together, that's the mentality and the thinking. And from the African American point of view, they also see us as people, again, that thinking takes us away into the suburbs, right? And in the suburbs, they're where the Caucasians American live. And because we did not grow up in this cultural war, the race war, the racial war, we do not understand this fight that takes place. So therefore, we find ourselves with the Africans American thinking that why are they so much close to Caucasian and others? Why are they living in that community of these people who are racially biased towards us? And there again, we have the third form of tension that most Africans, if you had a work site, and most Africans, even though they turn to move towards African American, but because of this issue of the way African American are naturally loud, Africans Americans are naturally trying to stand up and fight for the rights, then we try to veer away from that area, because we try to most of the time shy away from confrontation, and that leads to situations.
Okay, so let me bring Lady Ricky in. Basically, I think she is the only native here. I say native because she is the only African American on the panel. I hate to say that to kind of even we're trying to bridge this divide, so we don't even want to label that. But Lady Ricky, let me bring you in and let me hear your opening, your thought process on this whole discussion, and let us know exactly, give us the perspective of our brothers and sisters, the African Americans. I know you can't speak for the whole the whole people the body, but give us your perspective, and let's just kind of go from there.
Um, and yeah, that's part of my disclaimer, but first let me for allowing me to be on voice. I was listening.
So
Email was saying
I'll tell you what, Lady Ricky, there is a break in your transmission there. I don't know.
for her growing up that us or some other act slavery. My first time hearing that was is it not is it are you hear me?
No.
There's a break. So I don't know if you want to log off and come back on. There's a break in between there. So
Or she can change her position. Maybe she's driving somewhere. And,
no, she's been stopped over there for a
Okay,
while.
let me connect from another.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So we'll bring
let
you
me
back.
connect.
All right. So while we're waiting for
You
Lady
should
Ricky,
use in Verizon. The Verizon, they don't allow you to be on the road and work easily.
okay. So while we wait for her though, Sapo Lucia, let me bring you in. Let me just hear your opening on this particular topic, and then we'll go to Dr. Positive. Let's take 2 minutes, guys.
Yes, I think we all almost share the similar, attitude from back home, where we were all trying to become the Michael Jackson, the Michael Jordan, and those kind of guys, because those are people we look up to. But honestly,
Sapo Lucia, I'm so sorry, brother. Let me not interrupt you. Let me see if we can get her back on. I will come back to you if that's okay.
no problem.
All right. All right. Lady Ricky, you ready? You can go ahead. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, and I apologize about that. But first of all, thank you for allowing me to be on here. But I was saying that when Emmanuel was saying that African Americans, I guess, thought or think that Africans sold other Africans into slavery, I've never heard that growing up until recently. And I mean, very recently. I think the first time I might have ever heard that maybe 2, 3 years ago, because I always had a different thinking on that. In addition to, there are some African Americans who do want to bridge the gap, who do not see our brothers and sisters from across the way as strangers, or we to them as strangers. However, I will say, I personally, when I first started dating in the African community, I remember going out with this one Nigerian guy, and we were at a Mexican restaurant, and I'm eating. He's just sitting there. That was my first lesson. And while I'm eating, he started to lift my arm and like lift my pants to kind of roll up my pants leg. And I'm still eating because I'm trying to figure out what is he doing, but the food is good. And then I stopped. I said, "Sir, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm looking for your tattoos." I said, "Oh." I said, "Why are you looking for tattoos?" He said, "I'm looking, but I don't see them." I said, "I don't have any." And I said, "So what's the meaning behind this?" He was like, "Well, because on TV, the movies, all African American black, or as he said, black women have tattoos." And then he started going down this list of questions like, "How many baby daddies do you have?" And he's listening to my language, trying to see if I was cursing, if I was doing all of this, And I was like, "Dude, slow your roll." I said, "Do not try to put me in a box based on what you have decided to watch on TV.
Sure.
Know me as a person, and I will show you who I am. And I will show you there's more to us than what social media, TV, newspaper, however, have allowed us to be, or even how we ourselves have portrayed ourselves." So even in time, I've seen it. I've been in the Liberian community for about 8 or so years. but I've been in, but a lot of my friends are from West Africa or Central Africa or East Africa. And it's been like that even before, just for years. It's just how it has been. And even when I'm sitting down talking with them, I can still see that there's a gap. But yet, to me, maybe because I think differently, I see that we're more alike than we are differently. I know when we go out to eat, you can tell the difference. From a lot of times, it may be a lot of home cooked meals all the time. My style may be differently. But as far as music and all those things, African Americans are now starting to embrace Africans. There are some that remain ignorant, but that's on them. Let he who wants to be ignorant. But there's others who are embracing just how you said, Augustine, that when you will watch the movies and things, or you want to try to talk black. To me, I would be the one to say I'm offended because how do black people talk? How do we talk? I know a lot of times people think we always saying, yeah, man, what's up, man? You know what I'm saying, man? I've heard that for years. And I'm like, you'll never hear me say that, although it is being said. But again, we can be so, stereotyped. We can be so create our own divide. But I think we're new mindsets of people. And even my mom, she's 1947, she was born. She's never been in an African community until I introduced her to it. And so yesterday she called me. I won't say what she asked for, but she was asking for something particular that she wouldn't find in an African community or black community. And it was something that she would find in a Liberian or West African community. And my heart just smiled because eyes are being open, ears are being open, our mindsets are being changed. And we're at a place where we can welcome one another, and it's going both ways.
Oh man, thank you so much for that opening. And again, let me apologize if to anything out there that said blacks have their own language. No, that's not what I mean at all. But I think black Americans have this cool way of walking. They have this cool way of making the language to look beautiful, to sound beautiful. And so that is exactly what I mean. I would not. So you can't deny me that. I got to take that. I will hold on to that because that's why when you walking and you're doing that left or right foot drag and all that cool thing, I can't do it, but it's cool. So let me bring Mr. Sapoluzia in, and then Mr. Sapoluzia come in and just give your opening there. And then we'll go to Dr. Parson.
Yeah, so I think most of us had the same experience growing up back home, and I don't want to go back to what you said because exactly what you said, Sharif, is almost the same thing that I experienced growing up in Liberia. We all wanted to be like Michael Jackson. I know I used to break dance, just look cool like Michael Jackson, right? And I got scars to show for that too. We'll be talking all these slangs just to look cool, like the Tupac or LL Cool J, Ice Cube. All these guys were growing up, and we want to rap and do all these things. When I got here, it was a shock for me that I was accepted by the white group that I was accepted by the blacks. And that was a shock for me, especially when I joined the military. Because when I joined the military, I saw these guys, these black brothers of mine. I call them Black American. I don't like to use the term African American. That's my personal way of looking at it. I think I'd rather say Black Americans than African American. So I met the Black Americans and I felt that they were my brothers. But when I went towards them, they were kind of dressing away from me. I don't know, but I did not understand it. And then I found out that it was because of the message, the messengers, right? Those that were giving the message to our people, whether it's through the education system, whether it's through the media, whatever the situation is, right? I felt that there were the gap were created. So I decided to reach out to them from a different angle, right? To explain to them some of the historical facts that were there that they were not taught, that they were not looking at. And that's how some of them began to perceive my way of thinking. And we started to bridge that gap. But honestly, initially it was a huge gap. None of them wanted to accept me until when I started telling them, hey, why it is true your forefathers were ill-treated. Trust me, they were worse that happened to our fathers in their own land. And they said, really? I said, oh yeah. So don't hear and see what the media is showing to you as a fact. So what blessed me more, that in fact that it made them more receptive, was when we had a deployment in Africa. We went to a few African countries. Prior to going, they started talking all these crazy things. We're going to see lion. We're going to do this. I said, okay, you know what? Once we get there, you will see the difference. So we traveled to Europe, right? It was very difficult for us in Europe as Americans, especially when we went to Russia and other countries that were not American friendly. But then when we go to Africa, we had the best of everybody, white or black. We had the best of time in all African countries that we went to. When we came back, that mindset changed. That, oh man, this is different. Everybody got, those who could drink, they got drunk, and then we had to literally get into the boat. So they had more fun in Ghana, in Togo, in Benin, and in Cape Verde than they had anywhere. And then when they went to Sierra Leone, I didn't want to go to Sierra Leone because of the memory that we had. So I decided not to leave to go to Sierra Leone. But anywhere we went in Africa, they really had fun. And then when we came back, those groups that were with us, their mindset changed. So that gap, that bridge, we had to bridge that gap, right? But I think if we want to bridge the gap, we have to go back in history, relearn what we were told, and learn the facts and not just the opinion of our messengers.
Thank you, Mr. Sapolisi. Dr. Paulson, you got your 2 minutes. Your opening.
All right, thank you, sir. How you guys doing? Yeah, so for me, I'm going to take this on another spin, right? I hear what says Ricky said, and I hear what Cherie said about us trying to mimic a Black American. So I'll tell you who I walk like right now. If you see me walking, think about Lawrence Fishburne, right? My swag, I took it from Lawrence Fishburne. Now my dressing style, I took it from Usher, right? So Lady Reiki, when we said we mimic Black American, we saw some of the values that it brought. So when I came to America, I moved to Newark, New Jersey, right? I'll tell you what Sharif is saying. Today, I cannot live in Newark, New Jersey because of what I experienced there. The environment might have changed, but when I was there, almost every week, my car got broken into. So that was our neighborhood, right? I won't say, it was our neighborhood. My car got broken into. So these are some of the things that we kind of saw that made us to kind of leave our community. But I had this one dream, and I was trying to put it in my 2 minutes. A Black American old man saw me in that dream. He says, son, all of us, all of you come to our community, you start making money and you take it to the white neighborhood, right? How will our generation continue if all of you that come to this community and you are moving up? That happened in my dream, somewhere right after a volunteer event that I had in Dallas. And I bring that dream up to say that until we as Africans and African Americans find this one place to find what is good about each of us and move forward with it, we will stay in the past. And what the evil that was done in the past wasn't my fault. It wasn't Lady Reggie's fault. It wasn't Mr. Sharif's fault. But we are now being the victim for us to enjoy what we have now. Back in the day, we couldn't go to certain places. We can now do it. Back in the day, we couldn't work. We couldn't make certain amount of money. We can now do it. So what my core on this show is to encourage Black Americans, to encourage Africans to unite with Black Americans or African Americans so that we can build wealth, build Africa, build whatever we can build in our different communities. People are buying up our African American communities, right? Gentrification is happening because we that are making money are walking away from those communities. So my call for this show is, hey, it is now for us to wake up and unite and bring ourselves together and look at the future of our community, or else we will be stranger in every other community. And the 360 turn of racism, some way or the other, will impact us, because when we are the minority in every other community, and we don't have a community of ours, we are bound to feel as a race. Thank you, Mr. Sharif.
Thank you, Mr. Positive. I like it. And Mr. George, I want to come back to you, but let me go to Sister Ricky first. I will come to you, Mr. George. So, Sister Ricky, I want you to take me, because I think you've heard, we got there are a lot of Africans here. So I don't want to feel like we're ganging up on anything, but you've heard from these gentlemen, and you know exactly, and you've actually spent a lot of time in the African community, which we love you for. You know, you spend a lot of time with those communities, and basically, you have come to hear what we talk about. You've made observe our perception when it comes to Black Americans. So take me into the Black American community. I have my experience, everybody have that community. But you take us into that community. What is the discussion like? What do you hear? Why will people still not accept us in that family? Let's talk about that for a second.
Sure. Let me give my disclaimer that I haven't been technically in the, some say Black American, I say African American community in probably 8 years because I've been so busy working alongside Liberians in the community here. But growing up, and even now, because my family, we're African Americans from East Texas. I'll go back 8 years. I think it was about 8 years when I was going through a divorce, and I became introduced into the Liberian community, New Breed Grace, and my children and I, we were started going to church in a Liberian setting. And I remember my youngest son, Jalen, he was upset. He was, he was already angry because of divorce. But then he was like, you got us going to these Africans, and I don't know what the pastor is saying, and they eating foods I don't like. I don't want to have, and he threw a tantrum. He was like in eighth grade. I don't have anything to do with these Africans. It's just not for me. And I listened to him, and I respected his view and what he had to say, and I understood because he was coming from a place of anger. But fast forward, that these Africans that he didn't want to have anything to do with, one of his best friends is Nigerian Ethiopian mix. His longtime girlfriend is from Cameroon. And the people that he once rejected have embraced him, and he embraces them. So he's involved not in the Liberian community, but he's involved in the different settings. And so he's eating the foods that he didn't want to eat. And so his perspective changed when he realized that there's no difference. I know growing up, one of the difference that I saw, and I see now when I talk to people, because often people ask me, even people in the African community, especially when I talk to people that are not Liberian, whether they're Nigerian or whatever, they ask, why are you so involved with the Liberian people? What do you have to do with them? And the only thing I can say, and I hope this helps African American, Black American, and the alike, is that when I remember being at a place when I was going through a divorce, going through hurt, anger, rejection, all those different things, and God led me in the community that I wasn't seeking. I knew nothing about. This was right after Ebola. I've heard Ebola, but I was never connected to know the Liberian people. I always got Liberia or Libya mixed up. But I came into a community that embraced me. And there were some who embraced me and still have embraced me. And then there were some who rejected me. And I remember I would be on Facebook eating the foods, showing off the culture or whatever. I was very excited. And there would be some family members who would send me messages. You don't even know how to cook your own food. And, just little things. But Lady Ricky got a mouth on her. And so you give me mouth, I gave them mouth back. But in time, they realized that, oh, she's still there. Now she's in the church. I'm a minister in a Liberian church. I'm a chaplain for the Liberian community. And they come to see now it wasn't a phase. It's a lifestyle but then growing up, I'll go back to the 80s. We would have our hair pressed. We would have relaxers on our hair. And that was one of the differences, what we thought between us and Africans. African hair texture was different, but now fast forward, it's the thing to wear your hair natural. It's the thing to have it curly or kinky or however you want. It's the thing to, to want to be proudful of your dark skin or whatever skin you're in. And so the difference now would be, regardless of what newspaper may say, regardless of what media may say, one of the articles I was reading was written in 2019, I believe, by a Nigerian, and it was talking about how Africa had a mighty impact, influence on civil rights movements in the 60s. And I was reading it, and one of the books I'm reading, I don't know if y'all can see it, it's called Stokely. I'm on a journey where I'm only reading books from Black authors, but it talked about Martin Luther King, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., how he was highly influenced by the president of Ghana. He would go there and get inspiration. He would hold conversations with him. Stokely, that he had the same influence. How MLK had influence from not just Ghana, from from Kenya, Tanzania, and I may be pronouncing it wrong. I'm so sorry, forgive me. But these African Americans, these civil rights leaders, these men who were fighting for the freedom and the liberty of the people here, notice MLK even noted in his last speech. He said, what we're doing here in Memphis, in Georgia, in Tennessee, they're fighting the same fight in Africa. They're fighting with us. And I think that's the difference. Is we didn't realize, because it wasn't put out there, that while we were marching here, there was a march there. That the people that we celebrate, MLK that we celebrate, or one of my favorites, Malcolm X, they went to Africa to seek help. They went to Africa to get advice. They saw how there was some peaceful movements. They saw Black men lead a nation, and they went there to be inspired and to ask questions, to sit at their feet and to learn. It's unfortunate that we don't hear that in the news. We don't hear that when we celebrate Black History Month. But if we heard that, and if we was to read and search, I search how to put on a lace front wig, so I can also search to see how Africans and African Americans are one and the same. But when we come to realize that there's no difference other than geography, we're the same. You know, I just might not like my food as spicy, but I love the food. I may dress differently. My music may be different, but we're still the same. I can go in any community, whether it's African or not, and I can sit with the people and learn from the people and humble myself and just be there. And if we can do that in the white community, we can do that in Hispanic community or any community. Why not with our own brothers and sisters?
Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And Mr. George, I would like for you to take a stab at this particular comment coming from Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. This brother is saying he works among, I mean, you guys can read it, but at the end of that statement, he is saying that most of the African Americans, they actually feel superior to us. So let's look at that superiority complex. I mean, is that something you heard as you talk to friends? Is that something you heard, or is it the other way around? Is it that Africans, we feel superior to our brothers and sisters here based on what we've heard in the news, or is it the other way around?
I think he has a point, and that comes from the third phase of what I wanted to share, and that is the phase that a majority of African Americans have this understanding or have this mindset that the continent is backwards, the continent is war-torn, we are poverty striking, that most African immigrant that comes into this country, they come in this country, quote unquote, because we are fleeing a war situation, or because we are extremely poor. We have nothing in Africa. That, in fact, some we even believe, and it's from both sides, believe that we came in this country before we first heard the English language and got to know the English language. So he has a point. And again, you don't, as little Ricky is saying, it's because of what is shown there, or the stories we tell. If you put a UNICEF, I had this fight with my friends when I was at the United Nations University, because we went into this room and there was a lot of advertisement about how to support Africa, and those advertisements showed children that are poverty striking. children that are struggling. Remember the famous picture that even led some people to be suicidal of this the famine in Ethiopia. This African girl and the vulture is just ready to eradicate it. That's the picture that reflects within the mind of many people. The $5 donations that you're supposed to give to UNICEF, the pictures that come out show a lot of negative about the continent. So Africans American have it, and definitely when they see us, they believe that one, you have not you the first time you wore shoes or when you came to the US, the first time you drove a car when you came to the US, and that mindset may be the reason why some of them feel that they are superior and that you are inferior to them. The second phase to that question is that the second phase to the issue of the complexes in any social society, in any social or society that is stratification, whether it's in the African society or in the Caucasian society, a group of people always want to feel superior to another group of people. I mean, in the Caucasian society, for example, during the Civil War in the U.S., you had the saying of the white trash, and these were white people who became rich during the Civil War in the United States of America. And because they did not have the old money, as you call them, to identify them, the white side to call them the trash, and definitely over time, there's that demarcation. So in any any society, people try to separate themselves. So an African American in the situation where he have seen himself being made second class in his own country, see an African, definitely some of them will start to begin to feel that, okay, there's another group that I feel superior to, and this group is this group of migrants that come from the poverty-stricken part of Africa. So yes, he's right. There's a lot of it of that. I've worked, my first major job in corporate America, I faced that too, faced that understanding, not knowing that when you hire me, you read my CV, right? And then, and this was it was a black old company. You grab my CV, and after we start working, you start to have this kind of these philosophies start striking within the mind. But again, as we discussed in the second, I don't know when the second segment is coming, because time is almost up. But I'm gonna discuss later. And Lady Ricky have alluded to it. Dr. Positive have alluded to it. Emmanuel Sapolusi talk about it. There's the issue of education, and it's our duty to look at the situation, become in that situation, and then gradually try to assist our African American friends with their education. For example, the issue of them saying that, oh, you saw us into slavery. Slavery was a normal thing. If you read the Bible, the Old Testament, slavery is depicted throughout the Bible. What his name? Joseph was a slave boy.
Joseph by his brothers.
Yeah, he became prime minister of Egypt. So in the African concept, you have great kings like King Jaja of Opobo. He was sold as a slave, but he became a king of Opobo. You have the Oni of Ife. The original title of the Oni was a slave boy within the Yoruba kingdom, but the Oni of Ife is a permanent king in Yoruba. In fact, he's the Oni of Ele Ife. Ele Ife in Yoruba means that the source, the beginning, where civilization started, where the human existence began from. The head of that era is a form of slave boy. So that's the time for us to take educating each other to understand that when you were so into slavery, we had no concept in our mind as African that this type of terrible thing was going to happen, because when you are giving to somebody in Africa, or when you move into another person's home in Africa, that person take care of you as a son. You become part of the family. You are no longer seen as a slave. You are seen as a part of the family. You can grow into that family. You can take the name of the family. You can be respected within that family, as compared to what we saw when our brothers and sisters came to this end.
So, Mr. Sapolusia, let's go. I think you alluded to it. For most people, they do the wait and see approach, and just like you alluded to, for your military brothers, they were able to go back to the motherland and experience some of the pleasantries. And when they came back, that mindset changed. So let's look in your community. You live in Houston, beautiful Houston. Look in your community, and let's look at each of us. Let us not be here and try to deceive ourselves or try to play this. I think I got it right. Because most of us, though, when we go down the list, I don't know, maybe in our job places, but how many of us actually have African American friends that said, look, I'm going to function with this person. We're hanging out, we're doing stuff, and we're doing all of that, And so let me go to Mr. Sapalucia and I will come to Dr. Positive. So what can we do to really come together as a community? Because talking about it, it sounds good, but what are those necessary steps that we need to take to make us to see each other a little bit different?
So this is a step that I took, and it's good that I was introduced to the military and met some of my brothers. And up to this date, even though I've been out of the military for almost, actually 10 years, we all still talk. In fact, I wanted to just move from California here, and he and I had to meet up, right? Because of the angle from which I took it. Because I don't believe, and I don't hold anybody accountable for their fathers or whoever ancestors decision that was made, right? But what I always believe in is educating people. And I'm facing the same problem at my current job, because at my current job, I'm in a position where I'm leading a group and 90% of them are Black Americans. Now, they see me different, right? And they talk things about me that they don't know about. What I have done is...
So talk about some of those things. What do you hear? What is gossip that you hear?
That's what I'm coming to, right? So when I took over first in this department, what I started hearing is, we're going to do everything to make sure he's fired. Why? I don't know you. You and I have never met before, but you just have this thing at the back of your mind that we should get rid of this guy. Why do you want to get rid of me? So I had to take a different route by trying to educate them. Look, I'm not your enemy. In fact, it happened to a time. She's an older lady. She felt that I was against her for whatever reason. But actually, I was helping her, right? Because she would come up with these different excuses of work. And I would tell her, okay, since you can't do this, let's do this, right? So at one point, she thought I was punishing her until later on she said, hey, I think I can do this work now. And I think I can do this. I said, but you came to me and said you couldn't perform this duty because of your health condition. She said, oh, really? So were you really looking out for me? I said, yeah, why not? yeah, he gonna be like me. I should look out for you. But they were not looking at it from that angle. They thought I was there to punish them. I said, no, I'm gonna exercising what the company policy is. However, I have been lenient with you guys to make sure that I bring you to where you want to be, and that's the situation. And most of them, and not to go down on people. I don't like to do that. Most of them are single mothers. And I said, look, it is not a bad thing to be a single mother. I don't encourage it. However, you shouldn't come here as, let's say, medical assistant. And 10 years later, you're still a medical assistant. So some of them felt when I said that, they thought I was being negative to them. And I said, no, I'm going to try to encourage you, and I have opportunity in this company that can take you from medical assistant to a nurse, to a doctor, to whatever you want to become. So don't just come here and just want to be a medical assistant for 20 years, because by the time you get old, you'll get angry and you'll be frustrated with every young person that come in. So let us use our diversity, right? And build a bridge that we can grow. We all can grow. I'm here to help you as a Black person, and I want our community to grow. And honestly, it doesn't matter whether my company want to fire me or not, but everywhere I go, I want to encourage our people and tell them, look, do not let yourself be told. Do not let your story be told by somebody else. You make your own story. Do not let the community, the society describe you as a Black woman who just want to be whatever she is, what community or society says she is. No, tell them you are better than this. And that's what I preach to them every time I meet them. Every meeting we're in, I tell you, look, we have to get out of this position. And few of them took my advice. They went back to school. Few of them left my department. Why? Because they got another position in the company. And I said, this is what I wanted for you guys, And then those people who were left are now seeing that I'm not their enemy. I'm just trying to elevate them so that they can remain where I met them, because I want when I leave, they are all ascending to another position. So we got to approach them with different background. And just before I leave, there's a new person that I hired, and she heard the rumors and she came on to me, and I refer her to a book that I'm reading, the Africa 101. I think I told you guys about it, Africa 101. And I told her, I said, look, I know people got this mindset that Africans sold people into slavery, because that was the way she was coming from when she approached me. I said, I know people have this mindset, but it is not true. And I gave her just one passage from one of the chapters and told her, so think about our brothers and sisters that were brought to America. When they came into the United States, yes, they faced harsh conditions, but they came to a foreign land. But think about you in your home, on your land. You grow your your crops, and the white man come and take that land and crop from you, and make you to work on that farm, and telling you you have to give it a certain quota per day. And if you don't meet your quota, that man will take one of your child and cut his hair. And then if you don't meet, because you are working maybe let's say 10 hours and you're exhausted, you can't meet the quota he wants, he will bring your child and cut your child hand up. And then the next thing, if you don't still improve, he's going to kill your wife and make you eat your wife. Was that done to slaves in America? She said no. I said that's what happened in Africa. It happened in Congo, it happened in Zimbabwe, it happened in so many African countries. So you think it was horrible in America? Yes, it was horrible. But the worst happened in Africa that news don't talk about. Think about a whole 70% of the population of the Congo was destroyed by King Leopold. So these are information we got to give our people, and then they may understand some of those things, and they will understand where we come from, that we are not an enemy, but we are in the same boat, just on different waters.
All right, Mr. Positive, go ahead and approach it because I saw your finger going up, like doing jumping jacks. So go ahead and address it.
No, you are asking how many of us have Black American friends, and two of my best friends at work, right, are Black Americans, and we have this thing where we go and hang out almost once every month, at least to get to help each other to advance, right? So what I wanted to say, just to summarize this, is it behooves us, right, to tell people who we are. And even the white people, right? Even though we're talking about this basically for Black Americans, there are some white people that are ignorant of how African live in Africa, right? So we have to educate them. In Africa, when I was in Africa, I knew the American continent. I knew city names. I knew that America was a continent. When you ask few students in America, they don't know that, right? They don't know that Africa is a continent. They think Africa is
a country.
Right? So
Yeah.
I personally, when I got in school, I started from my community. Let me start from Newark. I started from Newark. When we were in Newark, there was this disparity between African Americans and Africans, right? Same thing. So we decided to start the African Commission. Today, the African Commission and the African and in Newark, right? And the government and in the city of Newark, they have a yearly event. And because of that partnership, today, African Africans have a place in the city hall that the state sponsor, right? And it kind of like a cultural awareness. Because of that same initiative, some of the people in the government or in the city, they were talking about going to Africa to see and investing in Africa. You understand? So this is bigger than any of us. Because imagine if African Americans and Africans unite to build the Africa we all seek. No country, no continent around the world can put forth to Africa, because Africans are some of the smartest around the world. African Americans, they have businesses, they run the entertainment business, you can say, right? Imagine the NBA taking a break. All the Black Americans in the NBA deciding to go to Africa for a year and build NBA kind of stadium in 3 or 4 African countries. The NBA in the United States will collapse. You understand? But I don't want that. I just need about 5 of them to invest somewhere in Africa, right? 5 of the NBA players invest somewhere in Africa. Do something different. Then going to school. Some of us are still in school. When I was in school, what I did was I partnered with the African American organization in school, and we started doing programs together, because on campus, you'll find a Caucasian organization working more with the African organization. And I said, no, this is not right. You know, we have to engage in order for us to know where we need each other, right? So basically, once we did that engagement, today, when I left that campus, today the African American organization and the African organization work according. They collaborate all the time, and these are the things we have to continuously do. It's not a one-day thing. It has to be constant. Every society, every community you get in, you have to find that center and start working with people there. We cannot just say, "Oh, because I did it in Newark, I'm now in Texas. I can sit down." You know, you have to continuously do it. Even us doing this show, is speaker too. So we have to find a way to even use this platform now to say, all right, maybe once every month, like we have mental health, once every month we can do an African American series and bring somebody on here like Lady Reiki, bring people on here to encourage people to go to Africa. Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, sir. You know, I already hired Lady Ricky for the platform, so I forgot. Thank you, guys. I'm sorry. But so let me go back to Lady Ricky, and then we'll all come back here. You guys will give your closing remarks, and then we'll try to end this thing. So Lady Ricky, when speaking with you, I really get this sense of, man, you are very thoughtful and you come from a different angle. I mean, again, I'm trying to be very careful how I phrase this. I don't
just
want,
phrase it.
yeah, I'm trying. I don't want to get to a point where I feel like there's lack of education in the African American community, and maybe that is actually facilitating this divide. But for you, you are an educated woman. You understand. You come from a different perspective. How easy is it to take this message to the larger African American community, and how receptive is the community going to be? I know you can't speak for the whole community, but I just want to hear your perspective on that.
Well, first, let me call out something that I'm hearing. So I'm hearing that African Americans are suffering from the lack of education. It's the African Americans who need to be who needs to learn to be tolerant. But I challenge you all that it's not African Americans, it's African Americans and Africans, because the discrimination goes both ways.
True.
It's both ways. So if an African American is ignorant, it may be because they had an experience with an African, maybe, that led them to being ignorant. Maybe there was some form of miscommunication or a language barrier, and the language barrier doesn't have to mean that one was speaking English and another speaking another language. It could be that they just didn't know how to effectively communicate. And so I say it's both ways. It's not just my African Americans or my Black Americans. It's all of us.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as how is it, or how receptive would it be to take the message out? We're doing it. It's one person at a time. Michael Jackson said, I'm starting, I think Emmanuel that's on here, he said that he mentioned Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson said, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. So first you have to have a desire or interest to want to know. If you don't have a desire or a curiosity to want to know how the other people live or how the other people flow in society, then you won't be a part of it. Let me just go backwards. Let me tell you about my Sunday today. Mm-hmm. So on yesterday, I was with the Liberian Community Association talking about bringing two groups of Liberians together because they're one. We're one. On Sunday morning, I was blessed to teach Sunday school via Zoom to an African American group of people, which is where my mom and my sister goes to church. Sunday service, I went to a Nigerian church for their Sunday service, and then after that, I sat in briefly for the Yoruba. I always pronounce it wrong. Yoruba. Yoruba people. Yoruba. Yes, because I love the talking drum. I mean, I love the language, and so I'm sitting in listening with them worshiping, and while they're praying, I don't know the language, but there's something that in me can identify with them, and so. But for me, it wasn't because I was raised around Africans. I'm from West Dallas, as they would say. I'm from the hood. I'm from Oak Cliff. I'm from the hood, as some would say. But that has nothing to do with me wanting or not wanting to know the person besides me. I don't think because of my background has anything to do with my curiosity. For me, it was a personal decision. For the next person, it has to be a personal decision. For me, I make it my responsibility wherever I go, especially if I'm in a group of Black Americans, African Americans, white Americans, wherever they are, if they're not African, is to show them the beauty in the African culture. And I honestly think I do that well. I'm very intentional in that.
I'm a witness.
Thank you. At work, I'm the only Black person, African American, person of color in my department, and I talk about Liberians, Nigerians, the food, the music, the culture, the church, all of the time. I preach the gospel of my people here and there. Let me read this. You see, I'm also a minister, so y'all trying to get me to preach. Y'all didn't call me on here to preach. So let me
hallelujah.
let me calm down, because I'm not gonna raise an offering. So let me just chill out. But President Kwame, I never heard President Kwame of Ghana last name being pronounced, so I'm not gonna pronounce it. I don't want to mess it up out of reason. Nkrumah, okay. So he said this during the Pan-African movement, and I hope I read it with justice. The forces that unite us are intrinsic and greater than the superimposed influences that keep us apart.
Powerful.
Yeah.
It's superimposed by other people's agenda. This is something that I teach my kids. Who lied to you? Shame on them. But even worse, why did you believe it? Shame on you. And something else that I think it was Reagan who said during the Cold War, trust but verify. So I'm not a person that you can come run to and give me gossip, because I reject it. I'll tell you in a heartbeat. I don't have to adopt it. I don't have to adapt to it. I don't have to make it my own. So maybe that's for you, but that won't be my experience. In the African community, I've suffered. I ain't gonna say suffered, because ain't nobody suffering me anything, but I have experienced racism. I have experienced discrimination. I have experienced all these things that I'm hearing you saying. I have experienced that from the African community, but does it stop me? No, I don't care. That's their ignorance. My responsibility is to be the light. So wherever I go, I will be the light. They can say at least that's one African American, that's at least one Black American that they know that goes against the odds, that embraces other people, that embraces other culture, that can be with people that's talking colloquial and can add her own in there too, that can sit down and eat the dry rice, the fried fish, the goose soup, the pounding yam, all those things. Why? I love food. I love music. I love people. I love dancing. Stephen, how many times have we danced together? We've had fun. We've had fun. Why? Because I know that you're just like me.
Stephen, be careful.
And I'm just like you.
The pastor to dances, man. Be careful.
No,
I'll dance. I'm all.
I'm like Lady Reiki, right? Once the music is on, anybody that flow with me, we go together, right? So, Lady Reiki, I'm not gonna let you out on there.
No.
Please, Sherry, give me that one chance, please. I beg you. I beg you, Sherry, please. Lady Reiki, please. What is your favorite Liberian food before Sherry take over? Please, I just want to know. Thank you.
My favorite Liberian food is dry rice with the sardines, with the okra sauce, with the pepper, with the bitter balls, dry rice, and fried fish. That is my absolutely favorite. And put plantains on the side. I don't like it hard. I like my plantains juicy. Put that on the side, and I am good.
It's okay. I'm hungry. Thank you.
No, but you know what? No, I mean, on a serious note, I think this is why. On a serious note, this is why this conversation is super important. You know, in her opening statement, one of the things that Lady Reiki said was, "We are more alike than we are different," and I think that's a alike place I want us to come from. But, you know, time will not permit us. So, Mr. Sapalusi, I will come to you for your closing remarks. I will go to Dr. Positive. I will let Sister Ricky come
close us.
So, Sapalusi, let me hear your closing remarks on this.
So, since our sister quoted Kwame Nkrumah, let me quote Kwame Nkrumah. He said, the passive sympathy of the African masses must be converted into active participation in the struggle for total emancipation of Africa. Now, I would just modify that by saying the passive sympathy of Black, because it's not only the African American that are not emancipated totally yet. It's every Black, even in Africa. Mentally, we are still blaming the slave masters, the colonial masters, today in Africa, and everywhere you go. You go to Haiti, it's the same thing. You go to Brazil, the blacks there are still saying the same thing. So until we can turn that activism into activities, we as black people will not survive. Let me just put this out there. The FAO said that by the year 2050, the soil depletion is going to be massive. Africa right now is still a virgin when it comes to fertile soil. Blacks, if we can start going back home and develop Africa, Africa is going to be a powerful continent that the world will struggle to overcome. But while we sit here and argue between us, China is infiltrating Africa and using the same neo-colonialism that the Western countries use. It's about time that we bridge our gaps and start fighting and make ourselves a fighting force. We can even develop our communities here, the black communities, instead of giving it to white people and selling it to them. We can develop it ourselves and use the same resources and develop the vast land in Africa and become a strong, powerful continent as black people, so that tomorrow the world will depend on us. Thank you again, Sis Ricky, for blessing over your time. And I would like to join you guys every Sunday when you have this bridging the gap of the continent, not the people.
Thank you, Mr. Sapalucia, and we really appreciate your input today. That was a very powerful closing statement. Dr. Positive, let me hear from you, sir.
All right. Thank you, sir. And I just want to thank everybody that stayed on with us today. Sherry decided not to make you guys a call in, so the blame is on him, right? So I just wanted to add that, but usually we let you call in. Says Mandy,
No,
thank
the
you so much
conversation
for
was
coming
so good.
on. And
I forgot to put the number out there. I'm sorry.
And Lala, thank you so much. Also, we would love to hear you contribute. I see your texts and messages and things. But for me, I'm coming back to America. Like I told you, I dress like Lawrence Fishburne. No, I walk like Lawrence Fishburne, and I dress like
Dressed like
Oscar, and
Ursa.
I sing like Lionel Richie. Right? So that nobody can tell me that I'm not Black American. Okay? So to close up, I would like to quote Dr. Martin Luther King. He asked this question. He said, "What is in your life's blueprint?" Right? What is in your life blueprint? Do not let anybody define your somebodyness. Find a way, as you lived to do something that is special. Find a way to do something that is unique. So whether it's uniting Black Americans and Africans, this could be our life blueprint. So we need to take on that challenge. Every one of us that are listening today, let's try and put this part of our life blueprint and do something to make this change happen. Wherever you are, whatever community you are in, find a way to do something to unite Africans and African Americans, because together, folks, I can promise you, the world has never seen the achievement, the accomplishment that blacks have been, that blacks have done so far. If we, as a race, come together, folks, the China, the United States, all these countries will see something that they've never seen before. They talk about space, the sky will be the limit, you know. So I just want to challenge us to think about that, how great we can become if we unite. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Positive. You always end on a positive note. I really appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Mr. George, go ahead, sir. Your closing remarks. Mr. George, you are muted.
Let me thank Lady Ricky for making enough time to be here with us today. And I think it's a great conversation. My point is that we just need to educate ourselves on both sides. The information received sometimes is positive, sometimes it's negative, and we cannot allow the few to deter us from integrating our community, our society together. So, for example, when you hear about drugs in the African American society, when we were growing up, it was blowing up, they were going to prison, but now the drugs is in the white community, it's now become a crisis, a health crisis situation. So we should be able to look at those kind of information from both perspectives and be able to integrate ourselves based on our knowledge. So thank you again for the show, and we look forward to having more conversation like this.
Thank you, Mr. George. We really appreciate your time, sir, because I know you have a tight schedule, but you made it, so thank you. Let me go to my special guest today. You know, I'm not going to say anything more, Little Ricky. take it over and let's hear your closing remarks and speak to us African and also speak to our African American communities.
So I'm going to read this passage in this article called Africa's Influence on the Civil Rights Movement. And again, as I said before, one of the people I love to read upon and study that I even have admiration for is Malcolm X. So don't let it be a shocker. I know some people, but I like his style. Malcolm X was much more connected to the struggles that were being fought on the African continent. In fact, Malcolm explained that Africa's independence was one of the reasons why the Nation of Islam's membership expanded so rapidly in the 50s and 60s. In a speech which was given after Malcolm left the Nation of Islam, he explained in his quote, one of the things that made Black Muslim movement grow was its emphasis upon things Africans. This was the secret to the growth of the Black Muslim movement. African blood, African origin, African culture, African ties. You'd be surprised. We discovered that deep within the subconscious of the Black man in this country, he's still more African than he is American.
Powerful, powerful words. Thank you again so much, Lady Ricky. We really appreciate your time. And we really hope that this message, this conversation, it will not just be something that fall on deaf ear, but it will be something that each of us will play active part in. And to our friends who joined us through Facebook or YouTube today, we say thank you again for joining Liberia Shall Rise. And we strongly encourage you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel. That way, when the show goes live, you will hear. I mean, every week we have something different coming on. But in closing here, I would just like to end by quoting one of my favorite people. I'm going to go for the man, Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King, when he gave his speech titled, I've Been to the Mountaintop, he made this great biblical analogy. Again, he's a preacher, so he made this great biblical analogy. One thing he said was, when the children of Israel, when they were enslaved in Egypt, one way that the Pharaoh could actually keep them apart was to actually bring differences and also bring some kind of dispute among the people, because the pharaohs understood that if they can keep the people divided, they can conquer them, they can control them, they can rule them. And so I say this, I use this quotation just to kind of remind each of us that, just going back to what Sister Ricky said, we are more alike than we are different. And if we can all come together, put away our differences, and look at each other and have these frank discussions, I think you educate me, I educate you, and we are able to pick up our pieces and go from there. But if we listen to what society tells us and we follow that, this divide will never be bridged. So we need to come together as one community, and we need to be working together as a team, and we need to be looking at each other as friends and not enemies. In so doing, friends, we will be able to uplift our communities and bring this divide to an end. So thank you again so much for joining us.